The gospel lectionary reading for this third Sunday of Easter tells a story about love. Jesus appears to 7 of his disciples after the resurrection. Peter and 6 of the other disciples are unsure what to do after the death and resurrection. So they go back to doing what they were doing when Jesus first called them. They're back out on the Sea of Galilee fishing. John paints the scene for us. The disciples have shoved off from the shore. They're out in their boat and they're fishing at night. Now, in the first century Palestine, they didn't have fiberglass rods and state-of-the-art reels. They fished with nets. The nets were made of linen, and there would be small rock weights around the edge of the net so that when they tossed it into the water, that would cause it to sink. John writes that the fishermen have been out there all night and they've been skunked. They haven't caught a single fish when ribbons of light are beginning to show in the sky. And as the darkness lifts, Jesus appears on the shore at daybreak. He calls out to them. They're about 100 yards out. He tells them to cast their net on the opposite side of the boat that they've been casting it. And when they do, of course, they catch this enormous school of fish that's almost shredding their nets. The disciples realize it's Jesus standing there, and so they set sail for the shore. When they reach the shallow water, they see that Jesus has a charcoal fire burning, and he's preparing breakfast for them. And then we pick up with our 3 verses for our focus today. It says, when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter said, "Yes, Lord. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my lambs." The second time, Jesus said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter replied, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Tend my sheep." Jesus said to him a third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was feeling hurt. "Yes, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." And Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." Now, why do you think Jesus asked Peter 3 times? Why didn't he just ask him once or twice? Why did he ask him 3 times? Anybody want to guess?
Garden. What happened in the garden?
What happened in the garden? Okay? Yep. Backing up just a little bit, if we go to that garden, they're on the Mount of Olives. Judas betrays Jesus, and then they haul Jesus off and put him in front of the authorities. While he's being tried, Peter is standing outside in the crowd, trying to figure out what will be the fate of Jesus. And while he's standing there, John says, around a charcoal fire, a woman points to him and says, "Hey, aren't you one of Jesus' followers?" And what does Peter say? Don't know the guy." 3 times, people stare at Peter and say, "Yeah, I think you're one of the followers of Jesus." And each time Peter says, "Nope, don't know him, never met the guy." So it comes as no great surprise that after the crucifixion and resurrection, Jesus might come looking for Peter. A colleague says that when she was growing up, whenever she failed, whether it was in some way trivial or terrible, the worst part wasn't getting caught, and the worst part wasn't being punished. The worst part, she said, was that her family never practiced restoration. No one ever found the language of grace. She never, ever heard, "I forgive you. It's okay. I still love you." Instead, she felt, she said, abandoned to a thick, damning silence. The family withdrew affection, avoided eye contact, shut down authentic conversation, and rendered the offense and the offender invisible. She said, eventually the ice thawed and life returned to a bruised normal. But the wound continued to fester just beneath the surface. She said a thick, hot shame filled her body and assured her that she was unfixable and unlovable. Well, after Peter denied Jesus 3 times, he must have felt an enormous sense of shame. Perhaps he felt unfixable and unlovable. Weeks earlier, Peter had been enthusiastic in his affirmation of Jesus. "I know who you are the Messiah." However, when danger filled the air, Peter murmured, "I don't know this guy." So when Jesus appears to Peter on the shore, once again standing around a charcoal fire, Jesus gave Peter the opportunity to overcome his 3 denials with 3 opportunities to reaffirm his devotion. And after each affirmation, Jesus told Peter how to express his love for him. If love for Jesus and not denial is authentic for Peter, here's how to show it. Tend my sheep. Of course, Peter represents us. Sometimes we are trustworthy and faithful and virtuous. And sometimes we are unreliable and cowardly and self-centered. And yet, God still calls us like Jesus called Peter. Tend my sheep. Now, I understand God calling Dietrich Bonhoeffer to stand up to the Nazis. He had a keen intellect and he was fearless. I can understand God whispering in the ear of Mother Teresa to take care of the poor in Calcutta. She had this compassionate heart for everyone who was destitute. I can see why God would nudge Martin Luther King Jr. to speak a prophetic word to our nation about the sin of racism. Incredible orator, passionate and persuasive. But for each one of them, there are millions of us. For each mighty apostle, a gazillion featherweights. And that's why it's so important for us to understand this exchange between Peter and Jesus. God does not expect us to be perfect. Messing up does not disqualify us from future opportunities. Most importantly, It is not essential we do something monumental to make a difference. Dr. King said, everybody can be great because everybody can serve. You don't need a college degree to serve. Your subject and your verb do not have to agree to serve. You don't have to understand the second law of thermodynamics in physics to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. Jesus, God, asks each of us, do you love me? If our answer is yes, he says to verify it by loving others. So it's important for us to sharpen our focus, to tune our ears, because opportunities to heal others will arise. Her comment was nearly imperceptible, no caps, bold font, or underline. In her ocean of words, it fell almost unnoticed, like a crumb that was dropped to the floor or a Cheerio that missed the bowl. Was she even aware of her words, or did they just spill out like a brimming cup of coffee that was bound to dribble over? She motored on to mundane matters as if to pull you off the scent, but your mind doubled back to those fragile words that exposed her pain. Will you deny you picked up her plea and just release it to the wind? Or will you pursue her dim disclosure of her distress? The Spirit of the Divine is whispering, do you love me? Seize the opportunity to say, I do.